Right. Welcome everyone to this Cradle conversation. My name is Laura Halpin. I am recording from my home in Walnut Creek, California, which is on the land that has been cared for and stolen from the Bay Miwok, specifically the Saklan tribe. And I would like to welcome my new guest, Aaron Nicholson, onto the screen before I introduce him. So, hello, Aaron.
Hello.
Welcome. Good to have you here.
I'm very excited.
Thanks, me too. So Aaron is a new acquaintance, hope to be friend, introduced to me by my friend Beth Watson. And I'm really excited to introduce him and his work to everyone today. And before I do that, I just want to again lay the groundwork for these Cradle conversations. They were designed to help us find some steadiness during unstable times, and also not only find steadiness, but also find constructive ways to destruct the aspects of our culture that are no longer serving us, if they ever have. And so what I'm always looking for are guests who have a steady way of showing up in the world, whose work is all about either cradling other people or rocking the cradle, rocking the boat. And so I was really drawn to the work of Aaron. He has founded an organization called I Give Black org. And his background for the past 30 years or so has been in the nonprofit world. And so I Give Black org is really, from what I understand, is rooted in the problems that Aaron has seen, in that many Black-centric nonprofits and their leaders are often the most essential people to solve the problems in communities, but often lack access to fiscal, operational, and human capital resources so that work is sustainable. And so Aaron is working with I Give Black to look for ways to center, to make that work more sustainable. And so I Give Black has been created to rewrite narratives of success for Black-centric nonprofit agencies, while also cultivating seeds of philanthropy within communities that empower the work of these valuable organizations. So thank you, Aaron, for this work.
No, thank you for allowing me to share this work with all of your listeners out there, and really creating a narrative right now with what we do, what I'm trying to do, and with, I know others have tried before.
So can you tell me a little bit about tell us a little bit about your journey, about how I Give Black org came to be? What is the why?
What is the why? And that's been an interesting question. And I want to back up before the why. I want to tell a little bit about myself, if you don't mind.
Please.
And these are things that you will never read. Hopefully you won't read online. So, doing research, but I'm originally from New York City, grew up in New York City, Queens, two-family household. But that was during the crack epidemic in the 1980s, and it personally hit our home and kind of tore us up with what was going on within the streets, within the country, within the crack epidemic. But and again, I tell everyone I had a great family support, but I didn't accept that support at the time. So whereas I should have ran to my family, I ran to the streets for support. Mm-hmm. So a lot of my teachings came from the street. Unfortunately, you know, I had a very negative childhood growing up. I, you know, at this point, you would say I would have been in the gang if we had gangs back then. We had more crews and cliques around the neighborhood, but that was my lifestyle. And it wasn't until I was impacted by a smaller nonprofit by actually a leader by the name of Lonnie Williams, who was executive director of an organization called Boys Harbor, and now it's called the Harbor for Boys and Girls in East Harlem, New York. You know, that was really the trigger that changed my life, pushed me towards social services. And, you know, it really put me on a trajectory of trying to work in social services and nonprofits as a career, as my career for life, and saying, what can I do to change, to shift the narrative of our communities through nonprofits. So having that opportunity, I'm a product of nonprofits. You know, and I tell everybody that. And again, I don't ever say I never had that a two-family household or parents that didn't love me, or I was forced to do things myself. No, I had, you know, great mother and father. They've now been married for 50 plus years. You know, I have great siblings that tried to show me positive things, but again, I decided to do things a little bit differently. And it wasn't until being embraced by nonprofits, social services, and really creating different opportunities through me being a youth in the programs, and then having the opportunity to grow and work within our organizations, really changed my life and gave me a passion for nonprofits. So as I said, my journey started in New York City, and had the opportunity to teach youth how to sail in East Hampton, because I learned how to sail, and I was able to then in turn teach youth from the inner city of Harlem how to sail boats and work as a team in a team atmosphere in sailing. And that kind of morphed into doing experiential workshops and trainings and leadership development for youth. So I always say that because I think it's important. A lot of people look at me now and say, well, you're doing pretty well. You're at a place, but I had to come from somewhere to get here. And if it wasn't for the impact of nonprofits, I could have been in a different spot at this time. So
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I'm really curious about, how was it that you were reached, or what made you reachable? Because, you know, how did you named a person named Lonnie? How did I don't know if that person is a man or a woman.
It was a male.
Okay.
Yeah.
How he reached you?
A lot of yelling.
Really?
But not even a lot of yelling. Just seeing him. He was a executive director of the Harbor for Boys and Girls at the time, and seeing this man who, first black man, first off, I've seen in a leadership position within an organization, but seeing that he did whatever it took to get the job done. And our first interaction was with him in our we had kind of a centralized bathroom, and this is when I actually was working at the camp as a junior counselor, and during orientation I went into the bathroom and saw this man cleaning the bathroom, and I thought he was a janitor. I thought he was the guy who was here to clean up the camp, but unbeknownst to me, he was the executive director. And what he showed me then and continue to show me is he's going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. You know, as much as he's this executive director at that time, if he needed to clean a bathroom to role model what it took to get the job done, he was going to do it. So I think with him, I idolized that with him. And it was really trying to see his leadership and see how to do things, but not only just what he did within the camp, but as I progressed and had conversations with Lonnie, he told me the struggles he faced with trying to get money for us Black kids and out at the camp. You know, we were, again, East Hampton, Long Island at that time was, you know, call it the Beverly Hills of the East Coast. And yet on a stretch, 100-yard stretch of land, you had inner city youth, nothing but Black and Hispanic inner city youth out at a camp. So the pressure was on to get us moved from out there, especially as the boom of real estate and more and more people started buying out there. And he always told me, as a Black man, he has to work a lot harder to afford us the same opportunities. You know, he was the one who pushed me to learn how to sail. He said, look out here, look at this bay. How many Black sailors do you see out here? Mm-hmm. And at that time I saw none, you know, and he pushed me, said, you need to learn how to sail. This is going to be a great skill set. And again, I can care less. I'm Black kid from the hood, and yes, I knew how to swim at that time. I loved the water, but sailing wasn't something that was important to me at that time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't see the significance of sailing and how the leadership and the team building and the teamwork really applies to many facets of life at that time. So he said, you need to go do this, and continually pushed me to do something. And I think ultimately it was being put in a leadership position. It wasn't until, and we're talking about 16, 17 years old, but you're talking about a 6-year-old saying, Mr. Nicholson. You know, that meant a lot to me, a kid looking up to me as a role model. So I think that really pushed me to change. Because again, I tell everybody, yeah, I was working out there, but that was in the summers and the weekends. I was still going home and hanging out on the streets. You know, I still had.
Okay. Whoops. So I just, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Again, just being seen as a leader, seen as a role model for other youth really made me want to change who I was and what I did, and gave me the passion to help others. You know, but, you know, my life did not change there. I got kicked out of my first university I went to. You know, here again, people say, well, you was on the right path. No, I wasn't. You know, I had a very, very sporadic childhood and young adulthood. But I look at all of that. It was all of the experiences that needed to happen to make me who I am today and give me the passion of what I have to do today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just some of us who can't learn by staying on a straight path, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so you're in the nonprofit world, and I still want to get to I Give Black org. And so this is your world. You're seeing how it works and how it doesn't work.
So yeah, I've had over the past 30 years, I've had the opportunities to create programs, to evaluate programs, to train leadership training. And a lot of times what I noticed was a lot of people, and you know, what really triggered me was a lot of people in leadership didn't look like me. Or if they looked like me, the board makeup the executive board didn't look like me, but yet these are people who are saying what we need to do for our community, you know, but yet they were creating narratives for us, but had no clue what we were going through. So through my career, I enjoyed doing what I was doing because, again, I was helping communities. I was changing communities. Just recently, I worked with created a large initiative for the city of Atlanta to bring youth and police officers together. And I think that was one of the biggest things that said we need to change. I need to figure out something to change, because as I was bringing these two groups, youth and police officers, together through working with a collaborative and nonprofits, I noticed a lot of the nonprofits that I was working with what I consider big box nonprofits. And again, no knock to a larger nonprofit, but I felt that there were a lot of smaller nonprofits, Black founded and ran nonprofits, that were in the community that could have did the job just as good or better. But because they were smaller budgets, their board makeup were predominantly Black, they weren't able to get the same access as, let's say, a Boys and Girls Club did, a YMCA does. So that was kind of disheartening to me. So I worked along with a lot of them unofficially because I wanted to figure out how can I build them up. But I kept on hearing a reoccurring theme that, this is all great, but our access to finances aren't there, or our access to the strategic development is not there. So I got to a point that I said, how can we change this narrative? You look at most of these small nonprofits in these communities, they've been working for years. The CEOs or executive directors are working full-time jobs to be able to run a nonprofit, but they're not they're having great impact, but aren't able to move forward. So how can we help? I mean, you have wonderful agencies like the United Way that gives funding all the times, but that funding doesn't trickle down to these smaller organizations. So that's where I said, and that coupled with the reemergence of Black Lives Matter, said it's time to start this. This is if the time is right, it's right now. And I constantly looked at in the beginning of Black Lives, just like I think a lot of people, well, what is the answer? What's the ask? And I said, this is my ask through this. I'm glad there's a shift towards the Black community, but what can I do as a member of the Black community to help to push things forward? And it's really to change these communities through nonprofits. So that's where the idea of I Give Black.org came up with myself and my co-founder. Was what can we personally do to help move these communities forward? And a lot of communities that are lacking resources are moved forward through the social service programs that are there. And even during the COVID, noticing that at the beginning, there was a lot of funding that came out for social service programs, but that funding didn't trickle down to these smaller agencies that are actually on the ground doing the work. They got called by the larger agencies when they needed to build up capacity of saying, hey, we have to service 200 families, so maybe we can get this smaller agency, give them a little bit of money that they can help us bring in 50 more families. But reality is they never got that direct money. So again, it was how can we help change the narrative of these and show the importance of these smaller Black agencies, but not only with the financial support, but giving them the strategic consulting that would position them now that a year or two from now, they are ready to be able to, they are positioned to be able to get that big funding that comes down for nonprofits. So I think that's really been the focus, and the idea behind I Give Black.org was how can we create a platform for these nonprofits to succeed. You look at majority of these smaller Black ran and founded nonprofits, they have a 1 to 3 year life expectancy. Great work again, but because I'm working a full-time job, I at some point I have to say, okay, what's more important, my livelihood or my passion to help people? And a lot of people have to choose my livelihood. I have to go out and kind of create funding streams for myself and let that idea go by the wayside. But how can we create a pipeline of these nonprofits and continuing to help? And that was, I Give Black Org. It said, what happens if we can give these people unrestricted dollars? When a lot of people look at the nonprofit game, a lot of money comes in on a restricted level, which means that, yes, you can get $50,000, but you have to buy $50,000 worth of computers. You may have to start up a new program. That's not helping you pay rent for your organization. That's not helping you pay salaries for your organization, transportation needs. So that's why I said, through all of the money I raised through my career, I always loved unrestricted dollars. Those were the most important dollars that came in, because that really helped me grow my infrastructure and give people salary increases or be able to look at my overhead. So I wanted these organizations to have the same opportunity a lot of big box organizations get with the unrestricted dollars, but not just saying, here's an unrestricted grant for $50,000, but you'll get this grant, but you're going to also get skilled expertise consulting with you over the next year to help grow your organization, to grow your idea to an organization.
So what I think is so impressive is just that the two words that come to mind when I'm listening to you is strategy and sustainability. Your eye is on how can you make this important work more sustainable, and you're looking at it. I imagine that it's so hard to do that analysis when you're in the thick of it and you don't have the resources, and so I can really see the value of that bird's eye view and do that support work that probably is hard to come by.
Yeah, I look at, again, a lot of these big box organizations, they have the opportunities because of their board structure to get loaned executives. They're getting the Fortune 500 companies to come in and say, we'll loan you an executive for free for the next 6 months to give you these expertise. These smaller nonprofits will never get that opportunity. So again, that strategy capacity building is very important, because again, we don't want to help an organization financially that after 12 months is going to be in the same issue, but be in the same place. It's, here's a grant, but what are you going to do next year differently? How are you going to build your capacity? How are you going to impact more individuals through your services? How are you going to create more programming or perfect that programming you're doing to now be able to leverage that data to get more governmental grants? So it's really creating a complete package for these organizations. And again, it's having that commitment to say, we're going to work with you to help get you to that next level. When I look at a lot of nonprofits and people who start nonprofits, and I was in this place, it's about, you have a passion, but you're not always a business-minded person. So how do we bring those two together? And, again, that is the focus of I Give Black Org. We have a great passion, but we also have the business expertise to really help build a successful organization.
Thank you so much for that background. I mean, it really makes just tracing your life from, your home, your neighborhood, sailing all the way up to now is really meaningful to hear. So thank you.
Oh, no problem.
All right, so these CRADLE conversations have 5 questions. So we're going to start. And so the question is, Aaron, what cradles you?
When I look at what cradles me, I look at that as what motivates me, what moves me, what keeps me going. And fortunately, I think we talked earlier, I had to call my son for some technical advice to get on this Zoom call. They cradle me. My 2 sons mean the world to me. And knowing that I have 2 Black male sons that are in this situation, in this world today, how can I make life easier for them? And, you know, I look at both of my sons, they're not only Black male, but they're part of the LGBT community. So now they have almost 2 strikes coming against them. How can I create a better life for them? And that's my focus. That drives me to move forward, is them. When I wake up, whether I see them or talk to them through text, that is the reason, and that gives me the fire to move forward and tells me every day that I have to do something to change what I can to change this world, because I don't want them in 20 years, 30 years feeling the same frustrations I've felt. So what I can change is for them. And not only just them, but I look at all of the youth. I've worked a good part of my career has predominantly been in youth services. So I look at all of the youth that have looked up and said, hello, Mr. Nicholson. You put me up on this pedestal of, you are a role model to us. These are the people, these are my cradles in life. These are my whys, why I have to move forward. They give me that fire to move forward. So at the end of the day, it's for, first and foremost, my sons. I have to give my sons, but it's for everybody else. As much as I have my 2 sons, I have an extended family. So I feel that it's for them. I have to move forward for them, for those services, for those easier opportunities.
And so do you find, so I hear you saying that your sons, your extended family, and your vision for their life pushes you. And is that also what sustains you and holds you? Like what's that support for you? What holds you to have this ability to go out and change the world?
I think what supports me is being grounded in everything I do and being realistic, not setting myself up for failure. I'm a very realistic person. And although I push people to get out their comfort zone, I try to push myself to get out my comfort zone so growth can occur. But ultimately, I have to be grounded in myself and what I've been able to do up to this point and how I can share it with other people. So I think, a lot of people say, I was put on this world for this, my reason for being is this. And I'm starting to realize that my reason for here is to be a vessel to help other people grow. And that's my cradle. That's what pushes me seeing other people smile, other changing opportunities for other people. That's my oomph that gets me going. And of course, yes, we reflect on ourselves. I have to meditate every day. I have to pray to God that I will have the strength to move forward. But moving other people, which is not always the best thing, putting others first, I have to focus on myself at time, but moving others to that next place has always been my drive. And that's when I wake up every morning. Yes, I have my checklist, but as I have my checklist and I'm checking it off, the things I want to accomplish, a lot of times it's accomplishing these to be able to get to this for somebody else.
I love the combination of your sense of your own power coupled with realism, because I think oftentimes people who are very aspirational don't have that sense of realism. It's more like optimism, so I think it's just an interesting combination. Mm-hmm. So thank you. So the second question is, in what ways do you rock the cradle? And that really is a question that's intended to get at, what do you do to rock the boat, to shake up things that you think that aren't serving?
Well, I think, and I'm not even I think, I know I Give Black Org is rocking the cradle right now, because this is a problem that very few people know exists. A lot of people doesn't look at nonprofits. Yeah, they're there to serve a purpose, but don't understand the intricate workings of a nonprofit. So, one thing I've been doing is sharing statistics and data about Black nonprofits versus white nonprofits, so people can see this is a problem. There are disparities in nonprofits. When you're saying 91% of nonprofit CEOs are white, and you're looking at what are the communities that they're servicing, that's a problem for me. If you're looking at, and again, I don't have my notes, so please excuse me, but if you're looking at majority of the over 45% of Black led nonprofits have an operating budget of less than $50,000, that's a problem to me. But other people don't know this problem. So I have to be able to, that's my rocking cradle approach. It's how do I change this narrative? How do I put a spotlight on a problem that most people don't see that there's a problem? That is a problem. This is not, I'm glad it's not, but this is not a Black male or Black female getting killed by a police officer and a video taken. That's a problem that people get to see. And fortunately now people are saying, majority of people are saying it is a problem, because a year and a half ago, we saw that and was just kind of blind to it. But there's not a YouTube video of a nonprofit that is struggling to survive because they're servicing our community. So I have to say, I have to bring these problems to the forefront and say that this is a problem. It's up. We knew when we started this that it was going to be an uphill battle, because, when you look at, especially social media today, nonprofits aren't a sexy thing. It's not somebody's running to and saying, hey, look at these nonprofits. Or some people say, hey, this is what I donate to, and I donate to my church, or I give to a nonprofit each year. But there still is a problem with the system. There is a systemic racism in that system. So my rocking the cradle, I Give Black Org rocking the cradle, our co-founder is bringing that problem to the forefront for those of us who are ready to listen to the problem. And again, it goes back to why we started this. It was, we knew Black Lives Matter was focusing on social justice. That's one area. But there's so many components, and when you say Black Lives Matter, and how can we focus on something within that? And that's, for me, Black Lives Matter or grow, and I'm a product of it, through these nonprofits. So I have to say, this is a problem. This has been a problem not for a year or two. This has been a problem with the system, and how do we change this system? So that's my rocking the cradle and saying, you know what, I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to push the data down your throats and say, this is what's happening out here. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm never will say that some of these nonprofits aren't doing a great job, because they are. Their leadership will not say that their leadership don't care, because they do. But again, when you're looking at servicing the Black community, why is there such a disparity in Black leadership and the ways funds are giving out to these organizations?
And so I imagine this rock, because you're addressing systems, and like you said, it's not sexy work. It's just this showing up every day and doing that, yeah, that slow, steady chipping away at a system that's been there. Yeah. So the third question is, do you have a cradle to offer us, the community of people that will be watching this conversation?
Change is possible.
Okay.
You know, change is possible. You know, I think we're at a point, the fact that there is a community listening to this says change is possible. And for those of people who are listening, you know, whatever that cradle is, put whatever your passion is, whatever your cradle is, put work towards it to change it. You know, change has to happen. You know, it goes back to that comfort zone. We have that comfort zone, stretch zone, and panic zone. Sometimes you have to jump into that panic zone to make changes. And trust me, I'm in a panic zone right now. This is something completely new with I Give Black org, and it's hard. You know, it's hard, and there's a lot of forces that are saying you're not going to succeed with this. But I understand change is possible because there is support. We're having a conversation. You know, there has been started to be a following for it. So what I tell people is change is possible as long as you are committed and have a passion to make that change, whatever it may be.
I really appreciate you naming that you're in a panic mode, because there's nothing about your presence that suggests panic. And so I think that it's easy for people to think that you just show up, you do your work, and it's really important, but that this is really, there's such an immediacy and an urgency involved in your work that pushes you beyond that stretch zone into panic. And so I just want to highlight that and thank you for that.
No problem.
Do you have something to offer this community to help us become more skilled at rocking the cradle, rocking the boat, breaking up the system, white supremacy culture in our spheres of influence?
You know, I think it's easy to say, but speaking out against injustices, you know, we see it all the time, or we have seen it, but I think for years, a lot of people have been wearing blinders. And now it's about putting on a different pair of glasses and saying, I see the world for what it is. And I may not understand it, but at least acknowledge that it's different. You know, acknowledge that there is a disparity in the way Black communities, brown communities, and white communities are dealt with through every facet of life. You know, I think for some reason the climate is right for a lot of people to start seeing things. But let's not just see it now. Let's kind of talk about it. You know, these conversations, a lot of people say these conversations are hard. No, they're not. These are conversations, once you start, these are conversations that people have been waiting to have. And these conversations invoke growth between communities. So as much as we can conversate and be willing to say, you know, I was wrong. You were right. That's going to promote growth between communities. You know, we see, I know we're all starting to see that the structure is changing against a lot of different levels of people now. You know, it's the socioeconomic status of people, not just the race, but we have to be able to say it, you know. Looking out and seeing people protest together has been a wonderful thing. But my thought is, let's do something more than protest. Let's create change. You know, it's great to say this is not right, but let's come together and create a solution. One of the things, as you know, leading others, I always said, you know, it's easy to come to me and say there's a problem. It's harder to come to me and say, here's a problem, but this is the solution, I think. And even as that leader, I may say, that's not the best solution, but I appreciated the fact that you work towards a solution. So not only saying, yes, this is a problem, but start looking for solutions to what the problems are.
And not only suggesting the solution, but also identifying your role in bringing that solution to pass. You know, I think it's easy to be, what is it, like the armchair coach, or, you know, but really like finding out where you fit in to that change.
Mm-hmm.
So important. And I think that it sounds like that's something that you've seen in yourself all along, you know, which I think is very admirable. That's what I see from this conversation, is your sense of leadership. Yeah.
I would say my sense of leadership, but also allowing others to lead is important in my life, and knowing when to step back and saying, it's your turn, or you have more knowledge than me.
Right. And that's leadership. That's a beautiful expression of leadership, you know. So the last question is, do you have a blessing or a vision for the collective?
My vision is going to be selfish at this point. I'm going to say, I'm going to ask the collective is help make our dream, my co-founders and I, passion, come to reality through I Give Black Org. You know, help us create the change that is needed. You know, when we first started it, we said, let's do it for, I'm in Atlanta, outside the Atlanta area. It would have been easy to say, let's do this for the city of Atlanta, metro Atlanta area, the state of Georgia. But we both said, this is so important, we have to be national. We have to create a national change. So I'm asking people to support. That's, you know, help bring this from vision, startup, to actual work. And that's what we're trying to do now.
Yeah. So I want to join you in that vision, that this conversation has a role in supporting your work, that supports other people's work, that supports communities that deserve support and sustainable infrastructure. And so I just want to just call everyone who may be listening across time and space close, mm-hmm. to really take in your message that change is possible, that we have an avenue to bring about that change through supporting your work, and to feel also the connection between our lives, my life and yours, that your success is my success and my success is yours. Mm-hmm. And so I thank you so much for your work and your vision and your just the intelligent, wise way that you were going about your work. And I want to thank you for being willing to be in a panic mode to bring about the change that is so important. So thank you, Aaron, for this conversation.
No, I thank you and your community for listening. That's the key.
Yeah. And what I am hoping, what I'm striving for in these conversations is that my community is your community and your community is mine. And so this is where the power of these conversations going out into the world is. So
Yeah.
thank you and best wishes. May your work be wildly successful.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. And I don't want to consider us associates or colleagues. I think I've gained a new friend. So.
Yeah, so excited about that. Thank you. All right, so we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks.